which might be worse. Towns like Welch and Keystone still had their mines, still had their company stores, and their rows of identical houses clinging to hillsides like barnacles on a sinking ship, but everyone could feel it. The slow hemorrhage of an industry bleeding out. The Hutchinson brothers, Samuel, 43, and Dennis, 39, had worked coal since they were teenagers, same as their father, same as his father before him. By March of 1981, they were shift supervisors at the Red Creek Mine, a mid-sized operation carved into a mountain 8 miles outside Welch. The mine employed about 60 men on rotating shifts. It wasn't the biggest operation in the county, but it was steady work, which meant everything when half the mines in West Virginia were shutting down or laying off. Samuel Hutchinson stood 5'9", built compact and dense like most men who'd spent 30 years bent over in coal seams. His face had that weathered quality that makes age difficult to determine. Could be 40, could be 60. Deep lines radiated from his eyes, cold dust permanently embedded in the creases even after scrubbing. He had a scar across his left forearm, where a roof bolt had torn through during a cave-in back in '74. White tissue visible through the black dust that never quite washed away. He woke every morning at 4:15, no alarm needed. His body knew. He'd make coffee in the same percolator his wife Margaret bought in 1973, stand at the kitchen window smoking his first cigarette of the day, watching the darkness gradually differentiate into the shapes of other houses, other windows, other men also awake at this ungodly hour. The neighborhood was quiet at 4:15, no cars yet. Just the distant mechanical hum of the mine ventilation system, a sound so constant you only noticed it when it stopped. Dennis Hutchinson was different. Taller at 6'1", thinner, with a nervous energy that manifested in constant movement, fingers drumming, feet tapping, jaw working a piece of gum or tobacco. He had their mother's narrow face and quick temper. Where Samuel was methodical and cautious, Dennis was impulsive, always pushing, always testing limits. He'd been reprimanded twice in the past year, once for bypassing safety protocols to save time, once for getting into a shouting match with a union steward about overtime assignments. The brothers had an understanding, though. Underground, Samuel was in charge. Dennis might be wild up top, might drink too hard on Friday nights and get into arguments at the VFW hall. But when you went down into the mine, you followed Samuel's lead. That hierarchy had kept them both alive for 3 decades in an industry that killed men with casual regularity. The Red Creek Mine had been in operation since 1948. By 1981, the main shaft descended 320 feet straight down before branching into a network of tunnels that spread through the coal seam like roots through soil. The seam was good here, thick, relatively clean, accessible. But it was also getting depleted. The profitable coal was getting harder to reach, farther from the main shaft, requiring longer tunnels, more support structures, more risk. On a typical day shift, which ran from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, about 30 men would be underground. Miners working the face, muckers hauling coal to the skip, roof bolters installing support beams, mechanics maintaining equipment, and the Hutchinson brothers supervising it all. The night shift, running 2 to 10, was smaller, about 15 men handling maintenance and limited extraction. The mine had a good safety record, relatively speaking. No fatalities since 1976, when a young miner named Robert Clemens got his hand caught in a conveyor belt and bled out before they could get him topside. A few broken bones, plenty of black lung developing in men's lungs, the usual occupational hazards, but no deaths. Samuel took pride in that. Charlie Denton was 27 years old in March of 1981, married 3 years, father to a 2-year-old daughter named Amy. He'd started at Red Creek right out of high school, following his Uncle Jack into the mine. When a young miner named Robert Clemens got his hand caught in a conveyor belt and bled out before they could get him topside. A few broken bones, plenty of black lung developing in men's lungs, the usual occupational hazards, but no deaths. Samuel took pride in that. Charlie Denton was 27 years old in March of 1981, married 3 years, father to a 2-year-old daughter named Amy. He'd started at Red Creek right out of high school, following his Uncle Jack into the mine, learning the work the way everyone did, by watching, listening, trying not to get killed while you figured it out. Charlie was well liked. Friendly without being pushy, reliable, showed up on time, didn't complain excessively. In a mine crew, those qualities made you popular. Charlie had a habit that annoyed some people but amused most. He carried the same lunch pail every day, a blue metal pail, dented and scratched, with his initials painted in white on the side. CD. His wife Susan packed it for him every morning, 2 sandwiches, an apple, a thermos of coffee, and always 2 homemade cookies wrapped in wax paper. Chocolate chip on Mondays and Wednesdays, oatmeal raisin on Tuesdays and Thursdays, peanut butter on Fridays. She'd been doing this for 9 years since they started dating in high school. Charlie was superstitious about that lunch pail. Said it brought him luck, kept him safe underground. Raymond Hutchinson, no relation to Samuel and Dennis. Just one of those coincidences in small towns where surnames repeat, was Dennis's closest friend on the crew. They'd grown up 3 houses apart, played baseball together as kids, gone through school together, started mining the same summer. Raymond was 38, divorced, lived alone in a trailer on his brother's property, drank too much most nights, showed up to work anyway. He had that quality some men develop, a kind of reckless indifference that reads as toughness, but is really just exhaustion. On March 11, 1981, 3 days before the collapse, Raymond was having a bad week. His ex-wife was threatening to reduce his visitation with his kids if he didn't start paying child support more consistently. His truck needed a new transmission he couldn't afford. He'd been gambling on college basketball March Madness and losing. The kind of small financial disasters that accumulate until you feel like you're drowning in shallow water. He came to work that Wednesday morning in a foul mood, looking for something, anything, to laugh about. The joke started small. Raymond saw Charlie's lunch pail sitting on the bench in the break room before the shift started. That distinctive blue metal, those white initials. On impulse, the kind of thoughtless impulse that triggers catastrophes, Raymond grabbed it, walked it down the row of lockers, and tucked it into Dennis Hutchinson's locker. "Hey, Dennis," Raymond called out, grinning. "I got you a present." Dennis opened his locker, saw the lunch pail, recognized it immediately. "The hell is this?" "Charlie's good luck charm," Raymond said. "Thought you could use some luck. You've been looking tired lately." It was meant to be funny, harmless, the kind of stupid prank that happens every day on work crews everywhere. Take someone's lunch, watch them search for it, give it back before the shift starts. Everyone laughs. 30 seconds of entertainment in the monotony of industrial labor. Except Charlie Denton walked in right then, saw his lunch pail in Dennis's hands, and his face went white. "That's mine," Charlie said quietly. "I know it's yours," Dennis said, holding it up. "Raymond here thought I needed it more than you today." Charlie's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, hand out. "Give it back." Something in his tone made the room go quiet. That edge of desperation, of genuine distress, cut through the usual workplace banter. Raymond's smile faded. "Jesus, Charlie, relax," Raymond said. "It's just a lunch pail. It's my lunch pail," Charlie repeated. "My wife packed it." "Give it back." Dennis looked at the pail in his hands, then at Charlie's face, reading the actual fear there. He handed it over. "Here, nobody's keeping your damn lunch." Charlie took it, clutched it against his chest for a moment, then turned and walked to his locker without another word. The thing about small towns, about tight work crews, about men who spend 8 hours a day in confined spaces together, dynamics matter. Respect matters. The balance of power, of social standing, of who can take a joke and who can't, it all matters intensely in ways that seem ridiculous from outside, but feel life or death when you're in it. Charlie's reaction to the lunch pail incident spread through the crew by the end of the shift. Men talked. They always talked. By Thursday morning, the story had evolved, gotten exaggerated, gained edges. Charlie had freaked out over his lunch pail. Charlie couldn't take a joke. Charlie needed to lighten up. The kind of casual mockery that establishes hierarchy, that tests boundaries, that can turn vicious if someone doesn't know when to back down. Raymond, still in his bad mood, still dealing with his mounting problems, latched onto this. He started making comments, little digs. "Hey Charlie, you want me to guard your lunch today? Make sure nobody steals your cookies?" Laughter from some of the crew. Charlie ignored it, kept his head down, did his work, but it didn't stop. Friday, March 13th, the day before. Dennis Hutchinson noticed the tension on the crew. As a shift supervisor, it was his job to notice. Tension underground gets men killed. Distracted miners miss safety checks, skip protocols, make mistakes. He pulled Raymond aside before the morning shift. "Let it go," Dennis told him. "The lunch pail thing. You made your point, everyone laughed, it's done." Raymond shrugged. "I'm just having fun with him. It's not fun if he's not laughing. Then maybe he should learn to laugh." Dennis studied his friend. Saw the dark circles under his eyes, the set of his jaw, the brittleness that indicated someone close to breaking. "What's going on with you?" Raymond shook his head. "Nothing. I'm fine. Let's just work." They descended into the mine at 6:15 that morning. 32 men on the day shift, including both Hutchinson Brothers and Charlie Denton. The work was routine, extracting coal from Section D, a tunnel about 800 feet from the main shaft, installing new roof supports in Section E. The mine hummed with its usual sounds. The pneumatic drill pulse, the scrape and clatter of coal hitting metal, the constant whir of ventilation fans, men shouting to be heard over the machinery. At 10:30 that morning, during the mid-shift break, Raymond did it again. Charlie had set his lunch pail down while he went to use the portable toilet they kept at the junction of Sections C and D. When he came back, the pail was gone. He looked around, saw Raymond holding it 20 feet away, grinning. "Looking for something?" Raymond called out. Charlie walked toward him. "Give it back." "What's the magic word?" "Raymond, give it back." "I don't know, Charlie." "Maybe you should ask nicer. Maybe you should explain to everyone why a grown man is so attached to his lunch pail. That seemed normal to you." Other miners were watching now. Some looked uncomfortable. Some were smiling, waiting to see how this played out. The social dynamic of the crew hung in the balance. Would Charlie assert himself, or would he back down again? Charlie reached for the pail. Raymond pulled it back, held it out of reach. "Raymond," Dennis Hutchinson's voice cut through the tunnel. "Enough, give him his lunch." Raymond's face flushed. Being called out by Dennis in front of the crew added humiliation to his already bad week. He tossed the lunch pail to Charlie, not gently, but a hard underhand throw that Charlie barely caught. "There's your precious lunch," Raymond said. "Hope the cookies are worth acting like a child." Charlie stood there, lunch pail in both hands, and said something that would replay in his mind 10,000 times over the next 40 years. "You don't understand. My wife packs this for me every day. It's the last thing she does before I leave. Some mornings when I'm down here, it's the only thing that reminds me I have something to go home to. So yeah, it matters to me. Maybe that makes me weird. But it matters." The tunnel went silent except for the ventilation fans. That level of honesty, of vulnerability, wasn't common among miners. Men looked away, embarrassed for him or moved by him or both. Raymond laughed. It was a harsh sound, bitter. "Jesus Christ, Charlie. You need therapy, not cookies." He turned and walked away, back toward the work face. Dennis watched him go, then looked at Charlie. "You okay?" Charlie nodded. "I'm fine," but he wasn't fine. And Raymond wasn't fine. And something had shifted in the social ecosystem of the Red Creek mine that couldn't be shifted back. The rest of Friday passed without incident. The day shift ended at 2 p.m. Men rode the cage up to the surface, squinting in the March sunlight, cold dust in their lungs and embedded in their skin. They clocked out, headed to their trucks and cars, drove home to wives and children and empty apartments. The night shift clocked in at 2:15. 15 men descending to do maintenance work, light extraction, the less intensive labor of the overnight crew. Raymond Hutchinson, no relation, went home to his trailer, cracked open a beer, sat in front of the television watching college basketball, and stewed. The humiliation of being called out by Dennis in front of the crew gnawed at him. The laughter that had followed Charlie's speech about his wife and the lunch pail, he'd heard it, registered that some of the men were laughing at him, not with him. The whole week crashed down on him, the money problems, the ex-wife, the truck, and now this, being made to look like a bully over a stupid lunch pail. He drank 7 beers that night. Then he called Dennis. "We need to do something," Raymond said when Dennis picked up. "Do something about what?" Dennis was eating dinner, his wife Linda clearing dishes in the background. "About Charlie, about this lunch pail bullshit. Everyone's going to think we back down, that we're soft." Dennis sighed. "Raymond, nobody thinks anything. It's over. Let it go. It's not over. You embarrassed me in front of the crew. You embarrassed yourself. I just stopped it before it got worse. I want payback. Payback for what? Jesus, Raymond, listen to yourself. This is about a lunch pail. A lunch pail. You sound insane." There was a long pause on the line. Dennis could hear basketball commentary in the background, crowd noise. "Monday," Raymond said finally. "Monday morning, we finish this. We show that little bitch he can't make us look stupid." "No," Dennis said firmly. "Monday morning, you come to work, you do your job, and you leave Charlie Denton alone. That's an order, not a suggestion. You understand?" Raymond hung up without answering. Dennis sat at his kitchen table after the call, staring at the phone. Linda asked if everything was okay. He told her yes, just work stuff, nothing to worry about. But he was worried. He'd known Raymond his whole life, could read his moods, knew the difference between Raymond blowing off steam and Raymond actually fixating on something. This felt like the latter. He called Samuel that night, told him about the situation. Samuel listened, asked a few questions, then said what Dennis had known he would say. "Keep an eye on both of them Monday. Don't let it escalate. If Raymond can't handle being around Charlie, we'll separate them, put them on different sections." It was a good plan. A reasonable plan. The kind of plan that would have worked if the world was reasonable. But Raymond Hutchinson, no relation, spent his entire weekend drinking and thinking and letting his resentment ferment into something darker. By Sunday night, he'd convinced himself that Charlie Denton had deliberately tried to make him look bad, that the whole lunch pail thing had been a setup, that Charlie was probably laughing about it with other guys on the crew, that everyone was laughing at him. None of this was true. But truth and perception are different countries, and Raymond was living somewhere far from truth. Saturday, March 14, 1981, began with fog. Heavy mountain fog that turned the world gray and indistinct. The kind of morning where headlights became smears of yellow and the air itself felt heavy enough to touch. Samuel Hutchinson woke at 4:15, made his coffee, smoked his cigarette, watched the fog press against his kitchen window. He had a feeling. Not quite dread, not quite premonition, just an unease that sat in his stomach like bad food. He arrived at the mine at 5:30, a half hour before he needed to be there. The lot was empty except for the night shift vehicles. The mine buildings, the bathhouse, the office, the equipment shed, sat dark and silent. The head frame towered above it all, that steel skeleton that marked every coal mine, the last thing a miner saw before descending. Samuel went to the office, made another pot of coffee, reviewed the work orders for the day. Section D extraction, Section E support installation, Section F survey. Routine work, nothing unusual. 34 men scheduled for the day, shift 2 more than Friday. He looked at the roster. Charlie Denton was on it. So was Raymond. Dennis arrived at 5:50, saw Samuel's truck in the lot, knew something was wrong. His brother never came in early unless he was worried. He found Samuel in the office, staring at the work orders. "You thinking about Raymond?" Dennis said. "I'm thinking about a lot of things. He'll be fine. He probably drank himself stupid all weekend and forgot about the whole thing. And if he didn't," Dennis poured himself coffee, "then we separate them. Charlie works Section D, Raymond works Section E. They don't see each other all shift." Samuel nodded slowly. That could work. The other miners started arriving at 6, trucks and cars filling the lot. Men in groups of 2 and 3 heading to the bathhouse to change into their work clothes. The transformation happened the same way every day: street clothes off, work clothes on, hardhats, headlamps, boots. The ritual of becoming a miner, of leaving one identity on a hook and putting on another. Charlie Denton arrived at 6:15, 15 minutes before shift start. His wife Susan had packed his lunch pail that morning: chocolate chip cookies. It was Monday, and kissed him goodbye at the door like she did every day. "Be safe," she'd said. "Always AM," he'd replied, the same exchange they'd had every working day for 9 years. He went to the bathhouse, changed into his coveralls, secured his lunch pail in his locker. He was early enough that most of the crew hadn't arrived yet. He sat on the bench, lacing his boots, when Raymond walked in. They looked at each other. The moment stretched. Charlie opened his mouth to say something, maybe an apology, maybe an attempt to diffuse whatever was happening. But Raymond turned away without a word, went to his own locker, started changing. Other men filed in. The bathhouse filled with the usual pre-shift sounds. Locker doors clanging, boots being stomped into place, the low murmur of men talking. Someone's radio playing country music softly in the corner. Dennis came in, did a quick head count, announced the work assignments. "Section D extraction team. Charlie, you're on the loader today. Marcus and Bill on the face. Section E support. Raymond, you're running roof bolts with James and Terrence. Separated. Different sections, just like they'd planned." At 6:30, the day shift descended. The cage could hold 12 men at a time, so they went down in 3 groups. Samuel rode with the first group, Dennis with the second, Raymond and Charlie in separate groups entirely. The descent took 40 seconds of that strange sensation of the world dropping away. The steel cage rattling down the shaft, the temperature rising as you went deeper, the air getting thicker, the weight of the mountain settling onto your shoulders, even though you knew that was psychological, not physical. The bottom of the shaft opened into a junction room, the central hub from which all the mining tunnels branched. Electric lights, power cables running along the ceiling. The heavy rubber belt of the main conveyor system disappearing into the darkness of the main hall tunnel. The smell down here was distinctive: coal dust, machine oil, damp rock, the particular odor of enclosed spaces that never see sunlight. The crew split up. Section D team headed east, Section E team north, other assignments to other directions. Samuel stayed at the junction for 10 minutes, watching everyone head to their work sites, making sure everything started smoothly. Dennis went with the Section E team. Charlie disappeared into Section D with his crew. By 7 a.m., the mine was fully operational, 34 men scattered through nearly 2 miles of tunnels, each doing their specific job in the larger choreography of coal extraction. Everything was fine until 9:15. Charlie's crew in Section D had loaded 8 coal cars by 9 a.m., good progress. They took a short break, 5 minutes to catch their breath, drink some water. Charlie sat on a rock outcropping, thinking about his daughter Amy, about how he'd promised to take her to the park that afternoon when he got off shift. It was supposed to be nice out, mid-50s, sunny, good park weather. His headlamp illuminated a circle of rough stone wall. Coal seams ran through the rock like dark veins. The wall looked stable, but you never really knew. The mountain was always shifting, always settling. Tons of pressure distributed across supports that were themselves just temporary intrusions into a space that didn't want them there. At 9:17, a roof bolt failed in Section E. The sound reached Section D as a distant crack, like lightning but underground, followed by the avalanche rumble of falling rock. Charlie's head snapped up. Everyone's did. The rumble continued for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Then stopped. Silence. Then the alarm. A shrill mechanical wail that meant one thing. Collapse. Protocol for a collapse was clear and well rehearsed. Everyone stops working immediately. Account for all personnel in your section. Contact the surface via phone stations located at junction points. If your section is stable, stay put and wait for instructions. If your section is compromised, evacuate to the main shaft using your primary or secondary egress route. Charlie's crew went through the checklist. 5 men in Section D, all accounted for. Marcus used the phone at the Section D junction. "This is Section D. We heard a collapse, unknown location. Requesting status update." Samuel's voice came back, tinny through the old speaker system. "Stay put, Section D. We're assessing now. Section E has had a partial roof fall. Checking for injuries. Partial roof fall. Not a full collapse then. Men got injured in partial roof falls sometimes, but deaths were rare if you weren't directly under the fall point." Charlie felt the adrenaline in his system start to ease. Partial fall. That meant it could have been worse. In Section E, Dennis was pulling rubble off Raymond. The roof bolt had failed at the intersection of 2 support beams, creating a weakness point. When the first rocks came down, they struck the next support beam, compromising it, causing a cascade. About 2 tons of rock and coal had come down in a space roughly 10 feet across. James and Terrence had been 15 feet away, far enough to avoid injury. Raymond had been directly underneath, installing a new bolt, looking up when the failure happened. He'd seen it coming, had time to throw himself backward. Almost got clear. The main mass missed him, but the edge of the fall caught his legs, pinning him from the knees down under several 100 pounds of rock. Dennis reached him first, started pulling rocks away with his bare hands, calling for help. James and Terrence joined him, lifting, throwing, excavating Raymond from the pile. It took 3 minutes. When they got him free, Raymond's left leg was clearly broken bone visible through torn coveralls, and his right foot was crushed, bent at an angle that made Dennis's stomach turn. Raymond was screaming. Pain of that magnitude makes everyone scream, no matter how tough they think they are. "Get the rescue team down here," Dennis yelled into the Section E phone. "One man injured, both legs, needs immediate evacuation." Samuel's voice came back. "Rescue team is on its way." "How stable is Section E?" Dennis looked up at the ceiling. The collapse had created a cavity, exposed raw rock where the coal seam had been. Dust still hung in the air. The nearby support beams looked intact, but stress had been transferred through the system. The whole section felt wrong, like a building after an earthquake, still standing but damaged in ways you couldn't quite see. "Unstable," Dennis said. "We need to evacuate everyone from E once we get Raymond out." Acknowledged. Keep everyone calm. But Raymond wasn't calm. He was going into shock, shaking, his skin turning gray. Dennis knelt beside him, held his hand, told him it was going to be okay, that help was coming. All the things you say that might or might not be true. Raymond grabbed Dennis's coveralls, pulled him close. His breath smelled like blood, must have bitten his tongue or cheek during the fall. "Charlie did this," Raymond whispered. "What, Charlie?" "He sabotaged the bolt. He knew I'd be working this section. He did this." Dennis stared at his friend. Saw the pain, the shock, the confusion in his eyes. "Raymond, no, that's not. The bolt failed. It happens." "This wasn't sabotage. He did this," Raymond repeated, louder now. "That son of a bitch tried to kill me. Raymond, listen to me. You're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. Charlie didn't do anything. The bolt failed. It's an accident. But Raymond wasn't listening. He'd constructed a narrative in his pain-addled mind, a narrative where Charlie Denton was responsible for his agony, where the lunch pail incident had been the beginning of a vendetta that culminated in attempted murder. The human mind does this sometimes, finds patterns that aren't there, constructs causation from coincidence, especially when experiencing trauma. The rescue team arrived 8 minutes after the collapse. 4 men with a stretcher, medical supplies, experience an underground extraction. They stabilized Raymond's legs as much as possible, gave him something for the pain, got him onto the stretcher. The evacuation took 15 minutes. Carrying a man on a stretcher through mine tunnels isn't fast. But they got him to the cage, got him to the surface, into an ambulance that had been called the moment the alarm sounded. By 10 a.m., Raymond was on his way to the hospital in Bluefield, 45 minutes away. The day shift continued working. This is what coal miners do. Continue working even after someone gets hurt. Because the mine doesn't stop, production doesn't stop. Bills don't stop, but everyone was rattled. A collapse, even a small one, reminds you that the mountain can kill you any time it wants. Dennis stayed in Section E with an engineer, assessing the damage. The roof needed to be completely resupported before anyone could work there again. That meant 2, maybe 3 days of repair work. That meant lost production. That meant the mine supervisor, a man named Harold Garrett, who ran Red Creek for the corporation that owned it, was going to be unhappy. In Section D, Charlie and his crew were back to loading coal, but slower now, more cautious, everyone glancing up at the ceiling more often than usual. At 10:30, Dennis came to Section D to talk to Charlie. "Can I have a word with you?" Dennis said, pulling Charlie aside from the rest of the crew. They walked down the tunnel about 50 feet, out of earshot. Dennis's headlamp illuminated Charlie's face in harsh white light, making him look younger than 27, almost boyish despite the coal dust. "How you doing?" Dennis asked. "I'm fine. Is Raymond okay?" "Both legs broken, maybe worse. They're taking him to Bluefield." Charlie closed his eyes. "Jesus." "Yeah." Dennis paused, choosing his words carefully. "Listen, Raymond was saying some things when we pulled him out. Pain makes people say crazy stuff. But I need to tell you what he said, because it's going to come up." "What did he say?" "He thinks you sabotaged the roof bolt. Thinks you tried to kill him." Charlie's eyes went wide. "What? I wasn't even in that section." "I've been in D all morning." "I know, I told him that. But he's not thinking straight, and knowing Raymond, he's going to stick to the story even after the pain meds wear off. So I need you to be prepared for that accusation, and I need you to know that nobody who matters believes it." Charlie leaned against the tunnel wall. His hands were shaking slightly. "This is because of the lunch pail thing, probably. Dennis, I didn't do anything. I just wanted him to leave me alone. I know, everyone knows. But Raymond's going to make noise about this, and there's going to be an investigation because that's protocol after any collapse with injuries, and you're going to have to answer questions. Just tell the truth. Tell them what happened Friday. Tell them you weren't in Section E this morning. Tell them exactly what you told me. The truth will handle this." Charlie nodded, but he didn't look convinced. And Dennis, walking back to the junction, felt that unease his brother had felt that morning intensify. Something was wrong. The collapse had shifted things, added another layer of instability to a situation that was already unstable. He called Samuel, told him about Raymond's accusation. "That's ridiculous," Samuel said immediately. "Charlie wasn't anywhere near E. I know. So why are you worried?" "Because Raymond believes it. And if Raymond believes it, he's going to do something stupid." They decided to send Charlie home early. It wasn't a punishment, wasn't an admission of guilt. It was protective, getting him out of the mine in case Raymond had said anything to other crew members, in case anyone else was buying into his paranoid theory. Charlie protested, said he needed the full day's pay, but Dennis was firm. "You'll get paid for the full shift. Just go home, be with your family, let this blow over." Charlie rode the cage up at 11 a.m., 3 hours early, his lunch pail still half full. The surface was sunny now, the fog burned off, temperature climbing toward 60. Beautiful March day. He stood in the parking lot for a minute, disoriented by being above ground, by sunlight, by not being crushed under thousands of tons of rock. Then he got in his truck and drove home. Susan was surprised to see him. What happened? Accident in the mine, Charlie said. Raymond got hurt. They sent me home. Is he okay? I don't know. He didn't tell her about the accusation. Didn't want to worry her with something that would probably go away on its own. Instead, he took his daughter to the park like he'd planned, pushed her on the swings, watched her climb on the monkey bars, tried to enjoy the sunshine and forget about the darkness 300 feet underground. At the hospital in Bluefield, surgeons worked on Raymond's legs. The left tibia and fibula were both fractured, clean breaks that would heal with proper setting and casting. The right foot was worse, multiple bone fractures, soft tissue damage, the possibility of permanent impairment. They'd know more in a few days after the swelling went down, but the orthopedic surgeon told Raymond's brother Michael that walking might be difficult, that Raymond might have a permanent limp. Raymond heard the word permanent, and something inside him crystallized. Not just the physical damage, but everything else, his failing marriage, his money problems, his reputation on the crew, his humiliation over the lunch pail, and now this permanent physical damage that would affect him for the rest of his life. All of it in his mind, traced back to one person, Charlie Denton. He told the nurses. Told them Charlie Denton had sabotaged a roof bolt, trying to kill him. The nurses nodded sympathetically, made notes, assumed it was the morphine talking. He told his brother Michael. Michael looked skeptical but said, "We'll get it sorted out." He told the state mine inspector who came to the hospital at 2 p.m. to get his statement about the collapse. The mine inspector's name was George Paulson, 58 years old, with 30 years of experience investigating mining accidents. He'd seen everything: explosions, floods, collapses, equipment failures, human error of every variety. He sat beside Rimon's hospital bed with a notepad and tape recorder, asking standard questions about the accident. "Walk me through what happened, starting from when you arrived at the worksite." Raymond described the morning, working in Section E, installing roof bolts with James and Terrence. Then he got to the collapse. "The bolt failed," Raymond said, "but it shouldn't have. I checked that section yesterday. Every bolt was solid. Someone tampered with it." Paulson's expression didn't change. "What makes you think it was tampered with?" "Because I know bolts. I've been installing them for 20 years. That bolt was compromised deliberately. Who would do that?" "Charlie Denton." Now Paulson's eyebrow raised slightly. "Charlie Denton. He's another miner at Red Creek." "Yeah, and he's had it out for me all week." Raymond told the whole story, the lunch pail, the confrontations, Charlie's speech about his wife. In Raymond's telling, it became something darker, more sinister. Charlie's emotional reaction looked like instability. The crew's sympathy for him looked like manipulation. "He's been planning this," Raymond concluded. "He wanted revenge, so he sabotaged the bolt, knowing I'd be working that section." Paulson made notes. "Mr. Hutchinson, I appreciate you sharing this with me. I'm going to investigate thoroughly. But I want to be clear. Accidents happen in mines. Roof bolts fail for a lot of reasons: metal fatigue, improper installation, geological stress. The fact that you had a conflict with another miner doesn't automatically mean sabotage." "Check the bolt," Raymond said. "When you pull it out of the rubble, check it. You'll see I'm right." "I will check it," Paulson promised. "I'll check everything." He left the hospital, drove back to Red Creek, arrived at the mine at 3:30. The day shift had ended. Most of the crew was gone. He met with Samuel and Dennis Hutchinson in the office, told them about Raymond's accusation. "It's bullshit," Dennis said bluntly. "Charlie was in Section D all morning. He couldn't have touched that bolt even if he wanted to." "I understand," Paulson said. "But I have to investigate. Can you show me Section E? They took him underground. The three of them rode the cage down, walked through the tunnels to Section E. The collapsed area had been cordoned off. Mining tape stretched across the tunnel, lights set up to illuminate the scene. Paulson spent an hour examining everything: the failed bolt, the support structure, the rock pattern, taking photographs, making measurements. "What do you see?" Samuel asked when Paulson had finished. "I see a roof bolt that failed," Paulson said. "Metal fatigue at the anchor point. Might have been a flaw in the bolt itself. Might have been stress from the geological formation. I'd need to take it to a lab to be certain, but from what I can see here, this looks like a standard failure. No sign of tampering, so you'll tell Raymond that," Dennis said. Paulson packed up his equipment. "I'll include it in my report. But Mr. Hutchinson Raymond is in a lot of pain, and people in pain sometimes need someone to blame. The evidence might not matter to him as much as we'd like." They rode back to the surface. Paulson thanked them for their cooperation, said he'd have a preliminary report ready by next week. Samuel and Dennis watched him drive away. "This is over, right?" Dennis said. Paulson confirmed it was an accident. Raymond can't argue with an official investigation. Samuel didn't answer right away. He was looking at the head frame, that steel skeleton, thinking about the weight of mountains and the fragility of men. "I hope so," Samuel said finally. "But I don't think it is." That night, Raymond's brother Michael visited him again in the hospital. Raymond was calmer now, the pain meds working, the initial shock wearing off, but he was still fixated on Charlie. "They're going to say it was an accident," Raymond told Michael. "The inspector, the mine management, everyone. They're going to cover it up because they don't want a scandal." "Why would they cover it up?" Michael asked. "If Charlie did something wrong, they'd fire him. They'd press charges. Because they don't want to admit their mine isn't safe. Because they don't want bad publicity. Because Charlie's probably gotten to them somehow." Michael sat on the edge of the hospital bed. He and Raymond had never been particularly close, different personalities, different lives, but family was family. "Ray, listen to me. You had an accident. A really bad accident. Your legs are broken. You're going to be in the hospital for a while, then rehab, then recovery. That's hard enough without adding conspiracy theories on top of it." "It's not a conspiracy theory." "Then what evidence do you have?" "Real evidence, not just that you guys had a fight over a lunch pail." Raymond couldn't answer that. Because he didn't have evidence. Just certainty, which felt the same as evidence when you were the one feeling it. Word of the collapse and Raymond's accusation spread through the mining community over the weekend. Welch was a small town. Everyone knew someone who worked at Red Creek. By Sunday, half the county was talking about it. Different people heard different versions. Some heard, Raymond got hurt, blamed Charlie. Some heard, Charlie sabotaged equipment, tried to kill Raymond. Some heard, the Hutchinson brothers were covering something up. Rumors multiplied and mutated like viruses, each retelling adding new details, removing others, shifting emphasis. Charlie heard the rumors. Friends called him, asked if he was okay, told him what people were saying. By Sunday evening, he was getting paranoid. What if people believed Raymond? What if the investigation found something that looked suspicious, even if it wasn't? What if he lost his job, couldn't pay his mortgage, couldn't support his family? Susan tried to calm him down. "You didn't do anything wrong. The truth will come out. Will it?" Charlie said, "Raymond has friends. People who believe him just because they like him better than me. What if the truth doesn't matter?" Monday morning, March 16th, Charlie didn't want to go to work. He sat in his truck in the driveway for 10 minutes, engine running, trying to convince himself to drive to the mine. Susan came out, knocked on the window. "You have to go," she said through the glass. "If you don't show up, it looks like you're guilty. You have to go, do your job, show everyone this is nonsense." She was right. He knew she was right. He drove to Red Creek, arrived at 6 a.m., went to the bathhouse to change, The other miners were already there. The room went quiet when he walked in. Not hostile exactly, but wary, uncertain. Men looked at him in a way. That social dance of not knowing how to act around someone who might be innocent or might be guilty. Dennis Hutchinson came in, did roll call, announced assignments. "Charlie, you're on equipment maintenance today. Topside. We need the loader serviced. Topside. Not underground." Charlie understood immediately. They were keeping him away from the mine, away from the crew, until things settled. Part of him was relieved. Part of him was insulted, but he didn't argue. He spent Monday working on the loader, changing oil, checking hydraulics, greasing joints. Simple mechanical work that kept his hands busy and his mind circling the same thoughts over and over. Above him, the headframe stood against the March sky. Below him, 33 men were working in the darkness, extracting coal, loading cars, probably talking about him. At Bluefield Memorial Hospital, Raymond was trying to figure out how to make Charlie pay. The legal route seemed slow and uncertain. He could file a police report, but the mine inspector had already said it looked like an accident. He could sue, but that took time and money he didn't have. The more Raymond thought about it, the more he realized that official channels would protect Charlie, would give him the benefit of the doubt, would let him walk away while Raymond spent months in physical therapy, learning to walk again with a permanent limp. That afternoon, Dennis came to visit. He brought magazines, a bag of chips from the vending machine, good intentions. "How you feeling?" Dennis asked. "Like someone tried to kill me and got away with it," Raymond said. Dennis pulled up a chair beside the bed. "Ray, I know you're hurt. I know you're angry. But you have to let this go." The inspector confirmed it was an accident. "There's no evidence of sabotage. Charlie was nowhere near Section E that morning. Then how do you explain the timing? That bolt was fine on Friday. Metal fatigue doesn't care about timing. Bolts fail. It's terrible, and I'm sorry it happened to you, but it's just an accident." Raymond stared at the ceiling tiles. Hospital ceilings all looked the same: acoustic tiles, fluorescent lights, the occasional water stain. He'd been staring at these tiles for 3 days, nothing else to do. Mind racing through scenarios and counterfactuals and revenge fantasies. "What if I'm right?" Raymond said quietly. "What if Charlie did do something, and everyone's just too afraid or too lazy to find the proof? What happens to me then? I'm crippled for life because of him, and he just continues working, continues living his life, gets away with it?" "You're not crippled," Dennis said. "The doctors said you'll walk again, with a limp. With pain, maybe with a cane for the rest of my life." That's crippled enough. Dennis didn't know what to say to that. It was true Raymond's life had changed permanently. Whether it was Charlie's fault or just bad luck didn't change the outcome. Raymond would limp. Raymond would hurt. Raymond's future had been altered by 2 tons of rock. "I'm sorry," Dennis said. "I really am. But revenge isn't the answer. It won't fix your legs, won't make you feel better, won't accomplish anything except more pain." "Maybe," Raymond said. "But at least it would be fair." Dennis left the hospital troubled. He called Samuel from the parking lot, told him about the conversation. "He's not letting it go," Dennis said. "He's going to do something. What can he do? He's in a hospital bed. He has friends, people who believe him. What if he convinces someone else to go after Charlie?" Samuel was quiet on the line. "Then, you think he'd do that?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. But I'm worried enough to call you about it." They decided to keep Charlie on topside duty for the rest of the week. Keep him visible, keep him safe. Let the rumors die down naturally. It seemed like a good plan. It might have even worked if Raymond had been a different person, if his pain had been less intense, if the universe had just given everyone a chance to cool off. But on Tuesday evening, Raymond called Dennis from the hospital. "I need you to do something for me," Raymond said. "What?" "I need you to scare Charlie. Make him understand there are consequences for what he did. Dennis's hand tightened on the phone. "I'm not doing that. You owe me, Dennis. We've been friends since we were kids. I'm in a hospital bed because of that son of a bitch, and you're protecting him. I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting you. From doing something that'll ruin your life more than broken legs already have. My life is already ruined. What do I have to lose? Your freedom. You want to spend what's left of your mobility in prison. Because that's where this goes if you hurt Charlie." Raymond laughed, a bitter sound. "Then I'll make sure it's worth it." He hung up. Dennis stared at his phone, that uneasy feeling blooming into actual fear. He called Samuel again. "Raymond's going to do something," Dennis said. "I can feel it. He's going to hurt Charlie or get someone else to hurt him, and it's going to be soon. What do you want to do?" "Warn Charlie. Get him to stay home for a few days. Maybe even leave town until Raymond calms down. You really think it's that serious?" "Yes," Dennis said. "I really do." They called Charlie that night, told him to stay home from work for the rest of the week, told him it was paid leave, told him they'd let him know when it was safe to come back. Charlie agreed, relieved to not have to go back, to not have to face the whispers and stares. But staying home didn't protect him. Because Raymond wasn't planning to go after Charlie personally. Raymond was planning something else. Wednesday afternoon, Raymond discharged himself from the hospital against medical advice. He couldn't walk, his legs were in casts. He needed crutches, and even those were difficult. But he could sit in a wheelchair, could be driven places, could make phone calls. His brother Michael tried to stop him, but Raymond was adamant. "I'm going home," Raymond said. "They can't keep me here if I don't want to stay." Michael drove him to the trailer, helped him inside, set him up in his recliner with the phone within reach and the television on. Then Michael left, thinking Raymond would just rest, would recover, would eventually let this grudge fade. Instead, Raymond started making calls. He called 6 different people that night. Friends from the mine, drinking buddies, people who'd heard his side of the story and believed him. He told each of them the same thing. Charlie Denton had sabotaged a roof bolt that nearly killed him, and nobody was doing anything about it. The mine management was covering it up. The inspectors were in on it. Charlie was going to get away with attempted murder. "Someone needs to do something," Raymond told each person. "Someone needs to show that bastard there are consequences." Most of them made sympathetic noises but didn't commit to anything. A few said they'd think about it. One person, a young miner named Dale Hoskins, 24 years old, not particularly bright but loyal to his friends, said, "What do you want me to do?" And Raymond told him. Not hurt Charlie directly. Too obvious, too risky. Something else. Something that would destroy Charlie's life without leaving fingerprints. Raymond had been thinking about this for days, and he'd come up with a plan. The mine, Red Creek Mine, the infrastructure Charlie helped maintain, the place Charlie worked, the source of Charlie's livelihood. If something happened to the mine, something catastrophic, that could be blamed on Charlie's maintenance work, Charlie would be fired, investigated, possibly prosecuted. He'd lose everything. "I want you to cause a collapse," Raymond told Dale. "A big one. Section D, where Charlie's been working. Make it look like a maintenance failure. Then we tip off the inspectors that Charlie was the last one to work on that section's supports. They'll investigate. They'll find problems. They'll connect it to Charlie." Dale was silent on the line. That could kill people, Ray. Not if we do it during the night shift. Barely anyone works Section D at night. Maybe 3 or 4 guys, and we can warn them first. Get them out of the area. No one gets hurt, but the mine takes massive damage, and Charlie takes the blame. I don't know, man. This sounds extreme. They broke both my legs and destroyed my right foot. I'll probably never walk normal again. That's extreme. This is justice. Dale said he'd think about it, but Raymond could hear in his voice that he was considering it. Dale had always been a follower, always needed someone to tell him what to do. Raymond had given him a mission, a purpose, a way to be part of something. The next day, Thursday, Dale called Raymond back. "I'll do it," Dale said, "but I need help. This isn't a one-person job." They recruited 2 more people, Mark Jessup, a mechanic from the mine, and Tony Petrillo, who'd been laid off from Red Creek 6 months ago and still held a grudge against management. Neither of them cared particularly about Raymond or Charlie. They had their own reasons for wanting to damage the mine. Mark was angry about a denied promotion. Tony needed the money Raymond promised to pay them from his injury settlement. Friday night, March 20th, 1981, 6 days after the collapse that injured Raymond. The night shift at Red Creek ran from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. At 10:15, with most of the night crew gone, Dale, Mark, and Tony arrived at the mine. They weren't scheduled to work, but they had their badges, knew the security guard, walked in without suspicion. "Equipment check," Dale told the guard. "Boss asked us to look at some of the machinery before the weekend." The guard waved them through. They went to the bathhouse, changed into work clothes, took the cage down to the main junction. The mine at night felt different than during the day, quieter, darker, more spaces without workers to fill them. Only 3 men were still underground, doing maintenance work in Section F, far from where Dale and his crew were headed. They went to Section D. The tunnel stretched ahead, support beams every 12 feet, electric lights strung along the ceiling, the coal face at the far end where extraction had stopped for the day. Dale had worked this section before, knew its layout, knew which supports were critical to the entire structure. The plan was simple: remove support bolts from 6 key beams. The weight redistribution would cause a cascade failure, bringing down a significant portion of the tunnel. It would look like a maintenance oversight. Someone had failed to check the bolts, failed to notice they were loose, failed to do their job. And since Charlie had been working in this section before his paid leave, he'd be the obvious suspect. They started work at 10:30. Using power tools, they systematically loosened bolts, removed anchor pins, weakened the support structure. It took longer than they expected. The bolts were tight, the equipment was heavy, the work was physically demanding. By midnight, they'd compromised 4 of the 6 target beams. That's when Dennis Hutchinson came down in the cage. Dennis couldn't sleep Thursday night. That same unease that had been gnawing at him all week had intensified. He kept thinking about Reman's phone call, about the desperation in his voice, about how people in pain make terrible decisions. Around 11:30, Dennis got out of bed, told his wife he was going to check on something at the mine, drove to Red Creek. The parking lot was almost empty. Just the security guard's car and 3 vehicles Dennis didn't immediately recognize. He went inside, asked the guard who else was on site. Dale Hoskins and a couple guys doing equipment checks. The guard said, "Equipment checks, at midnight." On a Friday, Dennis felt his stomach drop. He went to the bathhouse, changed quickly, took the cage down. The junction was empty. He walked through the tunnels, calling out, listening. Heard sounds from Section D, metal on metal, voices, the pneumatic hiss of power tools. He walked faster. Reached Section D, saw 3 men with headlamps working on support beams, saw the pile of bolts and pins on the ground. Understood immediately what they were doing. "Stop!" Dennis shouted. The 3 men spun around, headlamps blinding Dennis. He raised a hand against the light, saw their faces: Dale Hoskins, Mark Jessup, Tony Petrillo. "What the hell are you doing?" Dennis demanded. Dale stepped forward. "This doesn't concern you, Dennis. You're sabotaging the supports." "This is exactly what concerns me. Stop right now." "We can't do that," Dale said. "We have a job to finish. The job is over. Put the bolts back, get out of this mine, and maybe I don't call the police." Mark laughed. "You're not calling anyone." That's when Dennis noticed they were standing between him and the exit. 3 of them, 1 of him. The tunnel behind him led deeper into the mine, not toward the main shaft. He'd walked into a trap without realizing it. "Raymond sent you," Dennis said. "This is about Charlie. This is about justice," Dale said. Raymond got crippled because of Charlie's sabotage. And now Charlie's going to pay. Charlie didn't sabotage anything. The inspector confirmed it was an accident. The inspector was wrong, or lying. Either way, this is happening. Dennis looked at the support beams they'd been working on, saw how much they'd already compromised. If those beams failed, Section D would collapse. If Section D collapsed, the weight would transfer to adjacent sections. The whole eastern portion of the mine could come down. How many bolts did you remove? Dennis asked. Enough, Mark said. You need to put them back. Now, before the structure fails. That's the point, Dennis. It's supposed to fail. There are men still in this mine. Section F has a maintenance crew. If you bring down Section D, you might bring down F with it. Dale looked uncertain for the first time. Nobody's supposed to be here. It's after 10. It's a mine, Dale. There are always people here. You're not just sabotaging the equipment. You're putting lives at risk. The three men looked at each other. In that moment of hesitation, Dennis made his move. He lunged past them, running deeper into Section D, shouting, "Collapse danger! Section D! Everyone out!" His voice echoed through the tunnels. The three men chased after him, but Dennis knew these tunnels better than they did. He reached a phone station, grabbed the handset, started dialing the surface. Mark grabbed him from behind, pulled him away from the phone. They struggled. Dennis threw an elbow, connected with Mark's jaw, broke free. Tony came at him from the left. They crashed into the tunnel wall. The impact knocked Dennis's headlamp askew, tilted his perspective, made the world spin. Above them, one of the compromised support beams shifted. It made a sound like a gunshot in the confined space. Everyone froze. They all knew that sound metal stress, imminent failure. They looked up. The beam didn't fall immediately. It bent, creaking, redistributing its load to adjacent supports. Those supports, already stressed, began to groan. "We need to get out," Dale said, his voice high with fear. Now, they ran. All four of them, running toward the main tunnel, toward safety. Behind them, the first beam failed. The sound was apocalyptic, rending metal, crashing rock, the avalanche roar of a mountain taking back space it had been forced to yield. The collapse started in Section D but didn't stop there. The weight transfer propagated through the support structure, finding every weakness, exploiting every flaw. Section E, already damaged from the previous collapse, went next. Then part of Section C, the eastern portion of the Red Creek mine, was coming down in a cascade of progressive failure. Dennis and the others reached the main tunnel. Dust filled the air, thick enough to choke on. The lights flickered. Somewhere behind them, men were screaming, the maintenance crew in Section F, trapped by the collapse, calling for help. Dennis grabbed the main junction phone, called the surface, told the guard to sound the alarm and call for rescue crews. Then he turned to Dale, Mark, and Tony. "You're going back in there," Dennis said. "We're getting those men out." "That's suicide," Tony said. "The whole section's coming down." "Then we better move fast." But before they could move, before they could do anything, the main hall tunnel collapsed. The support beam directly above the junction, a massive steel I-beam that had been there since 1948, that had held up millions of tons of rock for 33 years, failed. It came down with the force of a bomb, bringing half the ceiling with it, sealing off the junction from the main shaft. Dennis saw it coming, tried to run, didn't make it. The edge of the collapse caught him, buried him from the waist down under rubble. Dale, Mark, and Tony were on the other side of the fall, cut off from Dennis, cut off from the main shaft, trapped in the eastern section with no way out. On the surface, the alarm was screaming. The security guard had called emergency services. Within 10 minutes, fire trucks and ambulances were arriving. Within 20, rescue crews were assembling. The night shift had been small, only 3 men scheduled in Section F, and now 4 more trapped somewhere in the mine after Dale's group went down. 7 men total. trapped underground, in an actively collapsing mine. Samuel Hutchinson arrived at the mine at 1:30 a.m., woken by the phone call, barely dressed, driving through the night at dangerous speeds. He found chaos rescue crews setting up, engineers assessing the situation, managers trying to figure out what happened. "My brother's down there," Samuel said. Dennis went down around midnight. The rescue coordinator, a man named Robert Hanks who'd been doing this for 20 years, laid out the situation. The main junction collapsed. "We can't get the cage down. The shaft is blocked at about 200 feet. We need to clear that obstruction before we can access the lower levels." "How long?" 6 hours minimum, maybe 12. Depends on what we find when we start digging. Do we know who's trapped? Hanks consulted his notes. Section F had 3 men, Willis Clark, David Manning, Roger Thomas, plus Dennis Hutchinson and 3 others who apparently went down unauthorized. Dale Hoskins, Mark Jessup, Tony Petrillo. "Dale Hoskins," Samuel repeated. Something clicked. Dale's friends with Raymond. Did Raymond put him up to this? Hanks looked confused. Put him up to what? And Samuel understood. The whole thing. Raymond's grudge, his desperation, his promises to make Charlie pay. He'd sent Dale and the others to sabotage the mine, and it had gone catastrophically wrong. "Get me on the phone with the hospital in Bluefield," Samuel said. "I need to talk to Raymond Hutchinson." It took 15 minutes to connect the call. Raymond was in his room, watching television, had no idea what had happened. When Samuel told him about the collapse, about the trapped men, about Dale and Mark and Tony being underground, Raymond went silent. "Did you tell them to sabotage the mine?" Samuel demanded. Long pause. Then, "I told them to cause a collapse. A small one, during a time when no one would be there. It wasn't supposed to. You told them to collapse a mine? Are you out of your mind?" "I didn't think anyone would get hurt. I just wanted to get Charlie fired too." Samuel hung up. His hands were shaking. His brother was underground, trapped, possibly injured or dead, because Raymond Hutchinson's vendetta over a fucking lunch pail had spiraled into this nightmare. He went outside, found his truck, drove to Charlie Denton's house. Charlie answered the door in his pajamas, confused about why his supervisor was on his porch at 2 in the morning. Samuel told him everything: the collapse, the trapped men, Raymond's plan, Dale's sabotage. Charlie's face went from confusion to horror to something beyond horror, something that didn't have a name. "This is because of me," Charlie said. "Raymond did this because of me. Raymond did this because Raymond's insane," Samuel said. "This isn't your fault. People are going to die because he hated me. Because of a lunch pail. People are going to die because Raymond made a terrible decision and got other people to help him. You didn't cause this." But Charlie wasn't listening. He was thinking about the 17 men underground. No, wait, Samuel had said 7. 7 men. 7 lives hanging in the balance because of a conflict Charlie had tried to avoid, tried to de-escalate, tried to walk away from. "I need to go to the mine," Charlie said. "There's nothing you can do. I need to be there. I don't know. But I need to be there." They drove back to Red Creek together. By 2:30 a.m., the parking lot looked like a disaster scene: emergency vehicles, rescue equipment, crowds of miners who'd been called in to help. The work was underway, crews clearing rubble from the main shaft, engineers calculating the stability of the surrounding structure, decisions being made about how to safely access the trapped men. Underground, Dennis Hutchinson was still alive. The rubble had crushed his legs, both of them, ironic echo of what had happened to Raymond, but hadn't killed him. He was pinned in agony, unable to move, but alive. Dale, Mark, and Tony were also alive, trapped on the other side of the junction collapse. In the remnants of Section D, they could hear the maintenance crew in Section F calling for help, but there was no way to reach them. The collapse had created a maze of fallen rock and twisted metal. In Section F, Willis Clark, David Manning, and Roger Thomas were alive but running out of air. The ventilation system had been damaged in the collapse. Carbon dioxide was building up. They had maybe 3 hours before the atmosphere became toxic. On the surface, the rescue coordinator was making terrible calculations. 7 men trapped. Limited time, limited resources. They'd have to prioritize, save the ones they could reach first. Hope there was time for the others. We'll go through the main shaft, Hanks decided. Clear the obstruction, get to the junction, assess from there. The work began. Crews working in shifts, removing rubble piece by piece, hauling it to the surface via a temporary pulley system since the main cage wasn't operational. Dangerous work. The shaft was unstable, more collapses were possible, but necessary. Samuel stood at the headframe, watching men descend into the darkness to save his brother. Charlie stood beside him, silent, his face carved from stone. "This isn't your fault," Samuel said again. Charlie didn't respond. At 3 a.m., they broke through the first obstruction. Found more rubble 20 feet lower. Kept digging. At 4 a.m., another breakthrough. More rubble. The shaft was packed with fallen rock, layer after layer, like an archaeological dig through disaster. At 5 a.m., they found Dennis. He was conscious, barely. Crushed legs, massive blood loss, shock setting in, but alive. They worked for 40 minutes to free him, stabilizing his injuries as much as possible before moving him. At 5:45, they got him into a rescue basket, hauled him to the surface. Samuel was there when they brought him up. Dennis's face was gray, his breathing shallow. The paramedics worked on him immediately, starting IVs, administering oxygen, preparing for transport. "Sam," Dennis whispered. "The others, Section F, we're getting them," Samuel promised. "Just hang on." They loaded Dennis into an ambulance. He'd survive, the paramedic said, if they got him to surgery quickly enough. The ambulance screamed away into the pre-dawn darkness, sirens fading into the distance. 1 man rescued, 6 still trapped. At 6 a.m., the sun rose on Red Creek Mine. Another beautiful March day. Temperature climbing toward the 60s. Birds singing in the trees around the parking lot. The rescue continued. Crews had reached the junction, found it completely collapsed. Began working on clearing a path towards Section F where the maintenance crew was trapped. But they were too late for Section F. At 6:45, rescue workers broke through into Section F, found 3 bodies. Willis Clark, David Manning, Roger Thomas, all dead from carbon dioxide poisoning. They died maybe an hour earlier, maybe less. If the rescue had been just a little faster, if the shaft had been cleared just a little quicker, they might have lived. 3 dead. 3 more still trapped somewhere in the eastern section. News of the deaths spread through the crowd on the surface. Families were there now, wives, children, parents. When they announced that 3 men were dead, the sound that rose from that crowd was something primal, something that came from a place deeper than language. Charlie Denton heard it and felt it like a knife in his chest. 3 dead. Because of him. Because of a lunch pail. Samuel put a hand on his shoulder. Don't do that to yourself. But Charlie was already doing it. Already calculating the causation. Tracing the line from his emotional reaction to Raymond's prank, to Raymond's injury, to Raymond's vendetta, to this moment. 3 men dead. 17 families destroyed. The dead men's families, the trapped men's families, Raymond's family, his own family. All because he couldn't take a joke about a lunch pail. The rescue continued. Engineers determined that Section D was too unstable to safely access. The remaining 3 men, Dale, Mark, and Tony, were trapped in a section that could collapse completely at any moment. The decision was made to attempt a secondary access point, drilling down from the surface, creating a new shaft that would bypass the dangerous areas. But that would take time, days maybe. And the trapped men might not have days. Underground, Dale Hoskins was having his own reckoning. He'd caused this. He and Mark and Tony had removed those support bolts, had compromised the structure, had triggered the collapse. 3 men were dead. Dennis was injured. And they were trapped, probably going to die. All because Raymond had convinced them that sabotaging a mine was somehow justice. "This is fucked," Tony said. They were sitting in what remained of Section D, a pocket of stable space about 20 feet across, surrounded by collapsed tunnel on all sides. "We're not getting out of here." "Shut up," Mark said. "They're digging. We just have to wait." "Wait for what?" "For the rest of this section to come down on our heads. Face it, we're dead. We killed ourselves." Dale listened to them argue, thinking about his own choices. Why had he agreed to this? Because Raymond had asked him to? Because he'd wanted to be part of something? Because he'd been too stupid to realize how dangerous it was? At 7 a.m., mine management released a statement. 3 men confirmed dead. Willis Clark, age 34. David Manning, age 41. Roger Thomas, age 29. 3 men still trapped. Dale Hoskins, age 24. Mark Jessup, age 31. Tony Petrillo, age 36. 1 man rescued. Dennis Hutchinson, age 39, in critical condition at Bluefield Memorial Hospital. The media descended on Red Creek. News vans, reporters, cameras. The collapse became a national story by noon. Mine disaster in West Virginia ran on every network. The details emerged slowly: the sabotage, the vendetta, the lunch pail that started it all. By afternoon, reporters were trying to interview Charlie Denton. He refused to talk, stayed inside his house with the curtains drawn while cameras set up on his lawn. Susan called the police, asked them to keep the reporters off their property. The police complied, but reluctantly. This was a big story, and everyone wanted answers. At the hospital, Raymond Hutchinson was under police guard. He'd been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit sabotage, reckless endangerment, possibly manslaughter depending on the final death toll. He lay in his hospital bed, legs in casts, watching the news coverage, seeing what his vendetta had created. The drilling operation to reach Dale, Mark, and Tony began at 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon. A specialized drilling rig was brought in, set up on the surface directly above where engineers calculated the men were trapped. The drill bit was 8 inches in diameter, not wide enough to extract anyone, but wide enough to send down supplies, communication equipment, maybe even medical aid. The drill was slow. Rock was hard. Every foot of progress took an hour. They drilled through the night, the sound of the drill becoming a constant background rhythm. Progress measured in increments so small they felt meaningless. Sunday morning, 36 hours after the collapse, the drill broke through. They'd reached the pocket where Dale, Mark, and Tony were trapped. A camera was sent down the drill hole, showed 3 men, alive, exhausted, frightened, but intact. Communications were established. A microphone and speaker lowered down the hole. Robert Hanks, the rescue coordinator, spoke to them. "We're going to get you out," Hanks said, "but it's going to take time. We need to widen this hole, create a rescue shaft. Stay calm, stay hydrated. We're sending down supplies." "How long?" Dale's voice came back, tinny through the speaker. 48 hours minimum, maybe more. Silence from underground. "Then, we might not have 48 hours. This section feels unstable. There are sounds, shifting sounds, like the mountains settling." The engineers knew this was true. Section D was a bomb waiting to explode. Every hour it stayed standing was borrowed time. But widening the drill hole would take as long as it would take. There was no way to speed up the process without risking a catastrophic failure that would kill the trapped men instantly. They drilled, Sunday into Monday. The hole grew wider, 8 inches to 12 to 18. Supplies went down: water, food, blankets, medical supplies. The trapped men survived on hope and the promise of rescue that might or might not come in time. On Monday afternoon, March 23rd, 9 days after Raymond's initial injury, The hospital released Raymond into police custody. He was transferred to the county jail, legs still in casts, wheelchair-bound, facing charges that would likely send him to prison for the rest of his life. His brother Michael visited him in jail. "Why?" Michael asked. "Why did you do this?" Raymond didn't have a good answer. Revenge seemed like a reason at the time, but sitting in a jail cell, watching the news coverage of 3 dead miners and 3 more trapped, revenge felt like the stupidest motivation imaginable. "I was angry," Raymond said. "I was hurt. I wanted someone to pay. And now you're paying. And Charlie's paying. And 7 families are paying. Was it worth it?" Raymond closed his eyes. No, it wasn't worth it. Tuesday morning, the rescue shaft was wide enough. 3 feet in diameter, reinforced with steel casing, stable enough to send down a rescue basket. The operation began at 6 a.m. 1 man at a time would be brought up. The basket lowered, a man loaded, the basket hauled to the surface. Dale went first. He emerged into sunlight at 6:45, blinking, crying, alive. Mark followed at 7:20, Tony at 8:15. All 3 men rescued, all 3 alive, all 3 facing criminal charges for what they'd done. Final tally, 3 dead, 4 injured. 6 men arrested, Raymond, Dale, Mark, Tony, and 2 others who'd helped Raymond plan the sabotage. A mine destroyed, millions of dollars in damage, a community traumatized, all over a lunch pail. The trial happened 6 months later. Raymond Hutchinson pleaded guilty to all charges, accepted a deal. 25 years in federal prison. Dale, Mark, and Tony each received 15 years. The others got lighter sentences, conspiracy charges, 5 years each. Charlie Denton never went back to mining. Couldn't bring himself to go underground again. Couldn't stand the darkness, the enclosed spaces, the weight of the mountain over his head. He got a job at a hardware store in Welch, retail work, minimum wage, nothing like the money he'd made in the mine. Susan took a second job waitressing. They struggled financially for years. His lunch pail, the blue metal one with white initials, the one that started everything, sat on a shelf in his garage. He couldn't throw it away, but he couldn't look at it either. Some days he thought about the 3 men who died, thought about their families, wondered if they blamed him. They did, some of them. Willis Clark's widow told a reporter that Charlie might not have pulled the trigger, but he'd loaded the gun. Roger Thomas's father said Charlie's emotional reaction to a simple prank created the conditions for disaster. People needed someone to blame, and Charlie was available. He lived with that blame. Carried it every day. Woke up thinking about 3 dead men, went to sleep thinking about them. The guilt never faded, just became part of his internal landscape, a weight he carried like miners carry coal dust in their lungs. Dennis Hutchinson survived his injuries, but never worked again. His legs were too damaged, his mobility too limited. He spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair, doing small accounting work from home, watching the world pass by his window. He and Samuel didn't talk much after the collapse. Too much pain associated with that night, too many what-ifs that couldn't be answered. Samuel continued working at Red Creek until it closed permanently in 1983, a casualty of the disaster and the declining coal market. He moved to Ohio, found work at a factory, lived another 30 years before dying of black lung, his lungs finally giving out from 35 years of breathing coal dust. The Red Creek mine was never reopened. The entrance was sealed, the buildings demolished, the land left to return to forest. If you go there today, you'll find almost nothing, some foundation stones, bits of rusted metal, the outline where the bathhouse once stood. Nature reclaims what humans abandon, but the head frame is still there. That steel skeleton, rusted and unstable, too expensive to remove and not dangerous enough to require removal. It stands above the sealed mine entrance, a monument to what happened. People from the area know not to go near it, know the story. Know that 17 people's lives changed forever because of what happened in March 1981. 17, not 3. The dead, the injured, the imprisoned, the traumatized, the blamed. Raymond Hutchinson served 19 years of his 25-year sentence before dying of complications from diabetes in prison. He never walked normally again after his initial injury. The combination of the roof bolt collapse and the subsequent injuries from being trapped created permanent damage that no amount of physical therapy could fix. His last interview, given to a documentary filmmaker in 1998, was a study in regret. "I destroyed my life over nothing," Raymond said. "Destroyed other people's lives. Killed 3 men I didn't even have anything against. And for what? Because my feelings were hurt. Because I wanted revenge? It's insane. The whole thing is insane, and I can't take it back. I can't bring those men back. I can't give Charlie his peace of mind back. I can't undo it. I just have to live with it. Or die with it, which I guess is what I'm doing now." He was right. Within 2 years, he was dead. The philosophical question at the center of this tragedy is one that has no satisfying answer. How do small conflicts escalate into catastrophic violence? How does a lunch pail lead to 3 deaths? The answer isn't simple causation. It's not that taking someone's lunch directly results in murder. The answer is human psychology, social dynamics, the cascading nature of retaliation, the way hurt feelings become grudges, become obsessions, become actions that no rational person would defend. Raymond wasn't evil. He was hurt, angry, financially stressed, socially humiliated, and those factors combined in a perfect storm of poor decision-making. Charlie wasn't weak or oversensitive. He was someone who found meaning in a small ritual, who tried to explain that meaning, who became a target because he showed vulnerability. Dennis wasn't negligent. He tried to prevent escalation, tried to separate the conflicting parties, tried to intervene even at personal risk. Everyone in this story made reasonable decisions given their information and emotional state at the time. That's what makes it so disturbing. Nobody set out to kill 3 people. Nobody wanted disaster. They just wanted resolution or revenge or justice or peace. But what they got was tragedy. The lunch pail, if it could speak, might say it was just an object. Just metal and food and a thermos of coffee. It had no agency, no power, no responsibility for what happened. But objects carry meaning beyond their physical form. That lunch pail represented love, routine, hope, connection to family. When Raymond took it, he wasn't just taking lunch, he was violating something sacred to Charlie, even if he couldn't articulate that at the time. And when Charlie defended it emotionally, he wasn't being irrational, he was protecting something that mattered to him, that kept him grounded in an inherently dangerous job. The real villain in this story, if there is one, is the inability to de-escalate. At multiple points, this conflict could have ended. After the first prank, if Raymond had apologized sincerely instead of escalating. After Charlie's speech about his wife, if the crew had responded with understanding instead of mockery. After Raymond's injury, if he'd accepted it as an accident instead of constructing a revenge narrative. After Dennis's warnings, if Raymond had let it go, but each escalation made the next escalation more likely. Each step toward disaster made it harder to step back. Until finally, the path forward was the only path anyone could see, even though it led to death and destruction. This is how violence happens. Not in sudden eruptions of inexplicable evil, but in gradual escalations of understandable human reactions. Each person protecting their dignity, their safety, their sense of self. Each person responding to perceived threats with counter-threats. The cycle feeding itself until it breaks loose from any rational constraint. The families of Willis Clark, David Manning, and Roger Thomas received settlements from the mining company, $200,000 each, which in 1981 was significant money, but which could never replace a husband, a father, a son. The mining company declared bankruptcy 18 months later. The Red Creek disaster having destroyed its insurance coverage and reputation. Charlie Denton lived until 2019, dying at age 65 of a heart attack. His obituary mentioned he'd been a miner, then a hardware store employee, and was survived by his wife Susan, daughter Amy, and 3 grandchildren. It didn't mention the Red Creek disaster. His family wanted him remembered for his life, not for the tragedy that defined it. But people who knew the story still talked about it. In McDowell County, in mining communities throughout West Virginia, the lunch pail incident became a cautionary tale. A story told to young miners about the importance of de-escalation, about not letting small conflicts become big ones, about thinking through consequences before acting. Whether anyone learned from it is unclear. Human nature being what it is, conflicts still escalate. Pranks still hurt feelings. Grudges still metastasize into violence. We tell ourselves we're rational creatures, capable of learning from past mistakes, but history suggests otherwise. We repeat the same patterns, make the same errors, hurt each other in the same ways, generation after generation. Maybe the only thing we can do is remember. Tell the story. Say the names of the men who died. Willis Clark, David Manning, Roger Thomas. Acknowledge that they were real people with real lives, not just statistics in a cautionary tale. Willis Clark was 34, married 12 years, father of 3 boys. He coached Little League. He liked fishing. He died breathing poison in a collapsed tunnel, afraid and alone, because of a conflict he had nothing to do with. David Manning was 41, divorced, lived with his mother. He was taking night classes, trying to get his GED, planning to become a mining engineer. He wanted to design safer mines, had ideas about better support structures. He died before he could share those ideas with anyone who could implement them. Roger Thomas was 29, engaged to be married. Wedding planned for June 1981. His fiancée wore her wedding dress to his funeral, said she wanted him to see her in it at least once. She never married, spent the rest of her life alone, visiting his grave every Sunday for 40 years until she died herself. These aren't abstract victims. These are people who matter, who had futures, who were loved. Their deaths weren't inevitable or necessary or justified by anything. They died because other men made bad decisions, and because sometimes bad decisions cascade into catastrophes. If there's a lesson here, and maybe there isn't, maybe some tragedies are just tragedies without deeper meaning, it might be this. Small things matter. How we treat each other matters. Dignity matters. Empathy matters. The ability to step back from conflict, to choose de-escalation over retaliation, to recognize when our hurt feelings are leading us toward destructive actions. These abilities matter intensely, because their absence can lead to disaster. Raymond Hutchinson took a lunch pail as a prank. Charlie Denton reacted emotionally. Raymond got injured in an unrelated accident and blamed Charlie. Raymond planned sabotage. Dale and others executed it poorly. Dennis tried to stop it and got hurt. 3 men died. 20 lives were destroyed. Each link in that chain seems small, comprehensible, human. But together, they add up to something monstrous. That's the real horror of this story, not that evil existed, but that normal human reactions, stacked on top of each other in the wrong order, created evil outcomes. We're all capable of this. Not the specific details, but the pattern. The escalation. The inability to let things go. The transformation of minor grievances into major conflicts. We like to think we're different, that we'd make better choices, that we'd recognize the warning signs and stop before crossing the line into catastrophe. But the men in this story thought that too. They didn't set out to kill anyone. They just wanted to work, to be respected, to have their feelings acknowledged, normal desires. Human desires. The difference between them and us isn't quality, it's circumstance. Put any of us in the right combination of stress, hurt, and opportunity for retaliation, and we might make similar choices. That's uncomfortable to think about. We prefer our villains to be obviously villainous, our tragedies to be clearly preventable in retrospect, our moral lessons to be simple. But the Red Creek mine disaster resists simplification. It's messy, complex, human in the worst way. And that's why it's worth remembering. Not as entertainment, not as a shocking story to tell at parties, but as a mirror. A reflection of what humans are capable of when we let our worst impulses guide our actions. A reminder that small conflicts can have enormous consequences. A memorial to 3 men who died because other men couldn't let go of a grudge. The lunch pail itself, Charlie Denton's blue metal lunch pail with white initials, was donated to the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum in Mattawan after Charlie's death. It sits in a display case with a placard explaining its history. Visitors look at it, confused about why a lunch pail is in a museum, until they read the placard and understand. Some people cry when they read it. Some get angry at Raymond, at Charlie, at everyone involved. Some just shake their heads and move on, thinking it's a crazy story that has nothing to do with them, but it does have something to do with them. With all of us. Because every time we let a small conflict escalate, every time we choose retaliation over resolution, every time we nurse a grudge instead of letting it go, we're walking the same path that led Raymond Hutchinson to a prison cell and 3 miners to early graves. The Red Creek mine stands empty now, sealed and silent. The mountain has reclaimed most of it, tunnels collapsing slowly over decades, the coal seam remaining untouched, the darkness complete. If you could somehow go down there, down into those sealed tunnels, you'd find the lunch pail's namesake sections, Section D where the final collapse happened, Section E where Raymond was initially injured, Section F where 3 men died. You'd find rusted equipment, fallen support beams, the detritus of interrupted work. You'd find, if you looked carefully enough, the exact spot where Dennis Hutchinson was pinned, where he lay for hours waiting for rescue. You'd find the phone station where he tried to call for help before being attacked. But mostly you'd find silence. The kind of profound silence that exists only underground, only in places no one visits anymore, only in spaces that have become tombs for both the dead and the stories we don't want to remember. Until next time, remember, humanity's worst tragedies often begin with our smallest failures, the failure to forgive, the failure to communicate, the failure to recognize when our pride or hurt is leading us toward choices we cannot take back. 3 men died in the West Virginia Mine Wars of 1981, not because of malice or greed or grand political conflict, but because ordinary people made ordinary mistakes that compounded into extraordinary disaster. The lunch pail on display in Mattawan is more than an artifact.